Tiffany.
It's Issa.
And I'm also Tiffany.
And this is the last Tiffany.
And this is TITT Talks, a podcast for modern women living in a mama world.
All right, guys, this is TITT Talks, and we have the Tiffany's and Issa here. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Our first episode was Growing Up Asian American, and it was supposed to come out this Wednesday. We're recording after protests for George Floyd, for Breonna Taylor. That really has come with the built-up frustration about the injustices in our criminal justice system and just in society in general. So we thought it was really important for us to film a bonus episode to talk about this because, you know, our experiences are all tied into racial injustice, right? So I'm going to just kind of head this off. We're all allies. We've definitely have made it known on our page how we feel and how we choose to take action. So I'm going to go into some information about being a good ally for the Black community. Black lives do matter, and until they do, nobody else's life really will. So, you know, allies are people who recognize the unearned privilege they receive from society's patterns of injustice and take responsibility for changing these patterns. Part of becoming an ally is also recognizing one's own experience of oppression in order to empathize with the struggles of others. An ally is a person whose commitment to dismantling oppression is reflected in a willingness to do the following: educate oneself about oppression, learn from and listen to people who are targets of oppression, examine and challenge one's own prejudices, stereotypes, and assumptions. And, you know, it's important that we all work through these feelings of guilt or shame, defensiveness, and especially amongst our families. If you know, you see something like that, or if you've experienced something like that, learn and practice the skills of challenging oppressive remarks, behaviors, policies, and institutional structures, and that we act collaboratively with members of the target group to dismantle oppression. So I know a lot of us have taken action towards signing petitions, towards donating. You know, we're committed to voting. Fuck Trump. But I just want it to be known, like, if I say something, this is Issa, if I say something, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the Tiffany's agree, but we are all on the same page as far as allyship goes. Black Lives Matter. Systemic racism needs to stop. We are all on the same page. But again, you know, I might say something that might not be their experience. So I just wanted to also let that be known.
Yeah, I just want to ask, I just want to add the importance of discourse and the importance of just hearing the other perspective and the importance of understanding that you don't need to know it all right now, and that it's so critical to learn and just sit back and kind of absorb all the literature and all the good research from scientific communities that have put together good points for you to learn, and that it's okay that you don't know how to handle this, because I found myself in that position early on too, where it's like, I don't know what to do, so maybe I shouldn't do anything at all, but that's definitely not the best course of action. This is a time for education, and this is a time for talking to each other and learning what is the right thing to do. So it's okay to be starting off at this point too. Just wanted to make that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, like, I guess, like, I personally will be the first to admit that I was uncomfortable, I would say. Like, I think I'm uncomfortable probably in my own privilege, uncomfortable in the fact that it took me 37 years to take some serious action, and also uncomfortable that some of the dialogue has uncovered, I suppose, unknown to me privileges that were oppressing the Black community. And some of that is obviously rooted in the model minority myth and the roots of that in white supremacy, but it doesn't excuse it, you know? And I guess, like, at the end of the day, I think for me, I don't want to be on the wrong side of this fight. And I know what the right side is. And I think, like, doing nothing is tantamount to being complicit to an unjust system. So you may not, to Tiffany's point, to Ticha's point, not have the right answer on how to deal with it. But I think the important thing is continued growth, the continued open to listen, and the future change in your behavior. Like, I hope to God that this is not what do you call it, a fad, right? Like, I
Right.
hope to God that this is like actually a call to action for all of humanity, that enough is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that it changes all of us. And I think it really has, particularly for our generation, for the younger generations. And I think that we are that example to our children, that if we don't, what kind of legacy are we leaving them? You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in our post, which you mentioned, we've talked about many of the ways that you can be an ally, to donate, to educate yourself, to listen, to protest if you can, so I think in our own ways, we're doing all of that. And it may not all manifest in the same way, but it's to the same end, to the same end goal.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback off that too, because I think, we've always, no matter what, we've always been on the right side, but there's like a palpable, tangible energy in the air. We're just like in the last month, all these really terrible things have happened to members of the Black community. And you just can't look away. It's in your face. And it's just to the point where saying nothing, doing nothing because you're scared of saying the wrong thing, like that's just not gonna fly anymore. And even if you are afraid to say something for fear of saying the wrong thing because you don't want to put your foot in your mouth, I think, I think that you can be an ally by at least practicing. No, if practice being an ally. If you say something wrong, be open to hearing why maybe your version of support might be offensive to, to the community at issue. I think it's important that we use our voices, especially us in our platform, to show support and show that, this isn't going to be tolerated anymore. It's done. It's a new era.
It is. And you can see it in the new generation confronting their families. I've had to confront family, which has led to a very tumultuous state right now, but it's worth it. It's all worth it because it does need to end.
Yeah.
And part of, I have to give it up to my Beat Junkie fam because we all had a Zoom meeting, all the students and the instructors, huge DJs in the community, about it. And, just to see people emotional, crying, yelling about things that they've experienced, made me really reflect and like what I did not put into growing up Asian American, which made me want to do this bonus episode. So, I really did look back. I don't know why I blocked it out. I always knew about it, but my great-grandfather, my Japanese great-grandfather, there's a smaller island next to Guam. He was a sugar cane plantation owner. He also owned a lumber company in Borneo. And so he actually died when his ship was bombed at the outset of World War II. Between the two, and my grandparents or my grandma had to be expatriated back to Japan when the Americans won the war. So that's one side of it. But when my great grandfather married a Chamorro woman and had my grandmother was so horrible to my mother. My dad married a Chamorro woman. He is Japanese Italian and has Chamorro in him, obviously. She gave him so much shit, and my mother, for their whole marriage.
Oh.
When she is of the same descent, because he did not marry a white woman or a Japanese woman. So if you think about that, I know in all of our cultures, it's like the darker you are, like, the more prejudice, bias you face. And it's this as well. And I even thought about growing up I'm going to get a little emotional about it, but I was reflecting because of all of this. And my grandmother would, me and my brothers, so I'm on the darker side, but not as dark as my youngest brother. And my middle brother, when he was born, he's super light, looks Japanese. And he would tell my mom that my youngest brother was like not even my dad's child. During Christmas, she would give us gifts. She would leave him out. It's nothing compared to facing, to being pulled over by a cop and like possibly thinking that you're going to die.
Yeah.
And I even think about how many times I've been pulled over and I've talked my way out of it. How many times do you think Jake has been able to? None. Zero. Probably talked my way out of I just talked my way out of a ticket 6 months ago when I got pulled over. So it's definitely within my family. And I just forgot about it. I think, as you become an adult, you kind of hide things that are, hurtful.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about that. And then I also thought about my dad who carried it on. Because when I first started dating Jake, he would tell me oh, his dad's a drug dealer. His dad was like a chaplain for the police. It's crazy. So he would tell me all of these things, stereotypical things that, you even hear from Trump regarding the Mexican community. So even though his great-grandfather married a brown woman, his grandmother still was racist against her child, and her child, my dad, still racist against my husband. And that is why it just needs to stop. And I know my daughter will never face that because we're, Jake is Mexican, Puerto Rican. We're so multicultural and, just by who we are in our relationship. So she will never have to, but can't imagine that it's so prevalent in all of our communities, in the Asian community, the Mexican community, the Black community. Regardless of the model minority myth, I remember we just went back to Guam in 2017 when my mom's like, I got this lightning soap, why do you need to do that? And it's just so ingrained in all of us. Not me, not you guys, because we're the new generation that recognizes that it's wrong. But I really forgot about the injustices within my own family. We just don't talk about it anymore because they're no longer in our lives, but those are sometimes the steps you have to take to stop those actions. Yeah. So that is my story, but
I'm so sorry.
I'm really sorry. Yeah, you had to go through that.
It's just, and it's nothing compared to, what other people have to face. And so that's why, I've really been combating my family about what they think about, why do I have to talk about Blue Lives Matter? They're the most protective fucking group in the country. Why do we care so much about our commodities versus people's lives? Mm-hmm. Protesting has always brought change. And so, that's just how I feel it was important to say this on here. Just so people know, it's important to approach that in your own families and to stop any action that is like that. And even if it's not to that degree, even if it's a small slight, I can commend my husband for recognizing it in his own family, and try to make a change with me on all fronts and reflecting, as well, and changing how you move forward. And I think that's all that we can do at the most minimum.
Yeah, but look, I think you probably are a model example of what's supposed to be happening to everybody right now. You're supposed to reflect, and some of that reflection will cause trauma, but you're also supposed to reflect and you're supposed to combat all of the stuff that's not right. And you have been honestly the biggest agent for change, I think, of all of us. Like, you are very vocal, you're very clear. You did a DJ set in support of Breonna Taylor. Like, I couldn't have a better example, I suppose, is
Oh, thank you.
the short of what I'm trying to say. And I'm my heart is broken that you and your brothers had to go through that. Like, my heart is broken for you. And I think you're right that, you know, it's painful, and it's not half of what many of the people in America have to face. But
Right.
I think if you can do that introspection and look inside yourself, then you have the empathy
Yes.
for what's happening, and you can understand why it is honestly the biggest fight of our lives right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you said your experiences led you to be this great activist, and you're like a gift that keeps on giving, because you're setting such a great example for us and anyone who can see your social media or even just talk to you or be in your presence, because no racist will survive around you.
I didn't even mean to make this emotional, but I think speaking it out loud, you know, like I wrote my notes.
Yeah.
Speaking it out loud is crazy, and thinking about colonialism, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, and I think that was my point. We all know how to support Black Lives Matter, you know, by donating, by signing petitions and things like that. But I think the real change within your families, within the minds of people, will come in that self-reflection and like Teacha had mentioned before, like self-re-education, using the right resources. And I know, Tilo, you talked about Code Switch through NPR, and that has been, actually I've been listening, and that has been a game changer too. Just so you educate yourself in the right way, you know, don't listen to Rush Limbaugh.
I actually also finished, God, there's such a long list of resources you should be and could be listening to, but I also just finished, I don't know if any of you guys watched 13th on Netflix, but that took it all the way back to the root of the issue. And it is such an educational piece. I feel like if anything, I haven't watched any of the other ones, but that one was a great one. And I think just there were so many great facts. Like, I think it was, Black men are only like 6.5% of the population, but they're 40% of the prison population. Yeah, and it went back to the loophole, which is why it's called the 13th of the 13th Amendment, about how, yes, it abolished slavery, but there was a loophole of, like, unless you're a criminal. So directly after the 13th Amendment was enacted, there was a huge prison boom, because they basically were criminalizing all the African American men, and for really, really, really minor offenses like loitering, and then they were utilizing them as labor. And it's just like really a cycle that just keeps going on and on and on, and nothing that they participated in. I think for us as Asian Americans, our parents, our forebears, whatever, they came here for a better life, right? Like, it was a choice that they were able to make. But for the black community, it wasn't a choice. Like, they were brought here as slaves. And I think that's really an important point that, you know, gets glossed over. A lot of people just don't go to the root of it, I suppose. And I think the 13th documentary really does expose the beginnings of how and why we came to be here.
Right. And it's so important to know the gravity of law and order. I'm putting quotations in the air, and how that just created an evolution from slavery into, you know, the criminal justice system we have now. Nothing really has changed, and the police force, the criminal justice system, is really ingrained in it. It's part of it. It's part of that transition. So it needs a full you know, there needs to be just a full,
I don't know. It just needs to be undone. And I like, as a numbers person, like, you can't, I guess for me, like, you can't refute fact, I suppose, is my standpoint. Like, 1 in 3 men in the documentary are Black men, will be incarcerated in their lifetime. And the same stat is 1 in 17 for white men. So it's just, it's the systemic
Yep.
issue that keeps popping up, and we need a rehaul, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not good cop, bad cop. It's in the system.
Yeah.
So I think in relation to our growing up Asian episode, just so you guys know, we filmed it. We recorded it at the beginning of COVID. So this wasn't a topic at the time. And we were talking about racism in our own experiences. And so we are doing this bonus episode because it's important to, and we will also write notes on how, the right resources, some of the resources, not, we can't possibly fit all the resources out there, but some of the resources that you can turn to, relearn, to take action, and definitely turn to that. There's just too much to talk about in this bonus episode, but we wanted you guys to know where we align, and how we condemn police brutality, and especially against the Black community, and how we are standing with them in the best way we know how.
Just Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
For Black lives.
Hardly believe that. And I'll go so far to say that if anyone has a problem with us supporting that, refer to Seth Rogen's Instagram.
Putting everyone on blast.
Exactly. And you know what? The positive thing about this, we all have children. So those are going to be the adults in the world in the future that will not take this as, status quo.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the only one that has a child old enough to talk about it too. But the other night, Dave and I were watching the news, and Tess kept asking us why we were watching the news all day. And by the time we got to her bath time, I have to tell her the story of what happened, and I really couldn't do it without crying. Couldn't tell her what happened, George, without crying, George Floyd. And her 5-year-old brain could not compute. She kept asking me, like, over and over to repeat the story because she could not understand why somebody would do that to somebody else. And her exact words were, I don't understand why that happened. Policemen are supposed to be good. Why did that happen to him? Why did he have to die? She said, my heart is crying for him. And, when she asked us, why did the police officer do that? Like, Dave and I did not have an answer for her. Not one that a 5-year-old could understand. Like, you can't understand, you can't explain a systemic unjust system to a 5-year-old. And we very simply said to her that, sometimes people are not nice to other people because of their color of their skin, and that's not something we do in our house. It's not acceptable, and you need to treat people the way you want to be treated. And this was days ago, and she still is coming back to me and asking me what happened to him. And like a 5-year-old understands that this is not acceptable. And I just, my hope is that the rest of the country will get there. And we're doing right, raising our kids the right way.
We are.
And they'll be, like you said, the fighters for the next generation.
And hopefully all this action keeps going and they won't have to fight as hard, and I think it's important to say along with that, it's not only the Black community's job to do the fighting, it's our turn, because they can't do it on their own. We have to change the minds of our friends and our families to all band together to take the action that we need to. And Chuk, you're an attorney, and I'm sure, and I've seen other friends of mine too, like it looks like you guys are all banding together because your primary goal is justice in your jobs. And I know your stance, and any other attorney I know, they are also taking the right stance on this. So I commend, at least in California, the people that I know, the legal community, for coming together, you know, to take that stand and offer their help, because, you know, that's a big component of it too. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But yes, I'm confident that we're all doing the things that we need to do, and we will continue to do it, not just now, but in the future, because we don't want our kids to learn this, because it's a learned thing, and innately you could see that Tessa knows that it's wrong.
Yeah.
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 Thank
What a time
you.
to be alive. I think also just to add on to like the seriousness of this atmosphere, and at like the importance of like learning every day, is that right now people are now realizing that we haven't we haven't done enough in the past, and this is the time to get active and to confront racism on a daily basis, and not just when something bad happens. So I think it's a really good thing that people are realizing that not nearly enough has been done, and just to acknowledge that you know, we know racism is bad is not enough. We gotta do more, and call people out.
Yeah, it needs to be a changed behavior and mindset going forward, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So again, if you follow us and you've heard a couple episodes, well, this will be our first bonus episode. Follow us, because not only are we going to talk about our own experiences, but you'll get little snippets of how we grew up, and you know, what leads us to take this stance. Black lives do matter, and only till they do all lives matter. So thank you guys for being with us. You know, and we hope you continue to follow us. And if you don't, because you don't believe what we believe in, then, like Chuk alluded to, you don't deserve
Peace
this
out.
podcast.
We don't want to be your friend anyway.
You don't deserve us. So if you have any comments, suggestions, or anything, if you want to talk more about this subject, please, you know, email us at titttalks@gmail.com, or follow us on IG at tit.talks. We would love to hear your voice. We'd love to amplify more voices on this subject. So thank you for tuning in. And thank you everybody for sharing.
Thank you, Isa. This was a great idea for the bonus episode. So thank you.
Thank you guys.